Hi, I'm Ian Kennelly, and my studio here is located in Fort Point, here at 249 A Street. It's one of the city's and one of the country's first original artist co-op buildings. So I'm primarily a painter. I was trained as a painter at the Massachusetts College of Art, graduated in the mid-90s. And I still consider myself a painter, even though I've really broadened that for myself. I've moved away from oil paints. I do not do that nearly as much. Part of that is just the materials and the handling of the materials, but I've broadened that to include watercolor, wash paint, which I kind of consider watercolor's big brother, since it can get everything so thick and juicy with it, and turned that a little more mixed media using wax crayons, which is something that I've talked about with another artist in the neighborhood and had a lot of dialogue with about Elisa Hamilton. She's been grateful, or I've been grateful she's been able to share crayons and different things and ideas with me. So I've learned a lot from her doing that and incorporating more collage. Always enjoyed drawing, and I've learned to incorporate the drawing really into the painting the last year. Part of that is thinking about something the professor said to me at Mass Art, George Nick, that I need to paint like I draw, and it baffled me for so long. So now I've learned to really put that painting actively in the process, not just use the drawing as a skeleton to paint on, but keeping the active drawing process within the painting process at the same time. And then, the drawing is also something that I talk about with another artist here in this building, Laura Davison, and really kind of push and pull and how we kind of, either one of us will get into a drawing and either put it together or take it apart, and what tools you're using, or have you tried this tool. So again, I've had a lot of good mentors in the neighborhood, building on what I learned. Gosh, it's been, when I started in college, I'd certainly been drawing and making stuff all my life from a small child. But when I got into college, I finally started to think I was going to go towards the painting department and print department, and just kind of stay in the 2D arts. And it was really, now that I can look back at it, it was the enjoyment of mark making and process, and recreating what I saw visually in the world. So I trained as an observational painter, and it was about laying paint and having a good foundation drawing to lay that paint onto. And as time went on, I saw that I could take things even further. Like I said, observational painter, I wasn't painting from photograph, but over time, I decided, for safety's sake and to get things I knew I couldn't return to on a daily basis, I was using photograph as a means of a sketchbook. So things like that tractor up high on the wall, done on my friend's farm in Northern California, but it was a need to do it with photograph and to still use all the skills I had been trained for and learned to do as an observational painter. And then I started to kind of pull it apart from there and use those techniques and skills to go further. So I was looking more at graphic arts and illustration and design, and those were things I did not do in college, but I still enjoy a good packaging and maps and just ephemera, stuff that I was finding on the street that would find its way in its old still lifes that I used to set up decades ago, much like looking like a large tractor or something, and really putting things together. And I know this sounds like a jumble right now, but it was more information for me to digest visually and then to bring forward to paper within my artwork. So I started getting a little more design or illustrative within the baseball work. I was looking at the maps of ballparks and seeing them as abstract images and pushing them even further, looking at my programs and using those as a starting point to paint from. Just looking at the different handling, maybe even taking the physical scraps of paper and design work, using them in collage, taking map and map languages and map icons even further. And so I've been translating the Boston Harbor Islands to look like traffic islands, and using the signs and signifiers of what we put on roads and airport tarmacs, and pushing the material a little bit. That reflective, heavy dark area is graphite pencil that I've pushed down hard and really gotten a sheen on. And even going beyond that and looking again at my mark making, looking again at how I wanted to incorporate drawing and painting, and taking it further again back to looking at the visual world, like these churches that I've done recently from the Smoky Mountains, or even more current projects like wanting to repaint all of Audubon's North American bird plates and just do them as I would do them. Understand his work by painting them as I like to make marks and enjoy putting paint down and using the techniques that are currently enjoyable to me. Boy, I recently had a conversation with a friend I went to Mass Art with, and he was making very fun objects and things during quarantine, just because he wants to see these objects in the world. He wants to have fun with the things that he's making. And it was a good reminder to me to not take myself so seriously or my work. And one of the things that I did during quarantine to keep myself busy and still connect to others was to find a way to get my public art piece, the vending machine, back out in the world. It's usually something that I bring to different events or here in the studio. That's the random art machine. And I usually invite the public to decorate the small wooden tiles that do come out of the machine for the slim price of a quarter. But since public events are not happening and have not been happening, I decided to send packages to family and friends of boxes of at least about 30 tiles each. And I said, just remember, you never know who's going to get a tile. It could be someone's grandmother, it could be a 10-year-old kid. So just be mindful of whatever you put on it, but otherwise you guys have free reign. So I'm eager to see what happens when I get these back. I don't know if the machine will be running in any capacity for the Open Studios for 2020, but I hope to have it around soon. And I may have to put the call back to get my tiles back soon from all those families. But it's the one way I've been able to connect to people in a small way, my close family and friends. But otherwise, it's just me in this space, as it has been for many years, but certainly during the last 6 months. I've tried getting deeper into some of my projects, like the Audubon project. I've had the opportunity to go to Maine safely and paint on site in southern Maine recently, where my in-laws live. But it's been challenging, like I'm certain it has been for everyone, not just artists, to kind of keep the passion and interest going, and to keep myself sane by continuing to make marks and find the things that keep me happy, things that are still fun.
I like that. That was good. Because I feel like a lot of artists can relate to that. I mean, it's like with everything going, like, how do you still keep it interesting and fun and get things done? It's very cool.
I was recently part of a show in Michigan, and the show was completely virtual. They were able to spin around and be flexible and still do it that way. And the curator said to me, art is so important during these times. And all art is important during these times. It keeps the human spirit going. And she referenced art friends who were making art just prior to and just after the September 11th attacks in 2001.
Oh, yeah.
And I was in graduate school at that time, and having been a graduate student for all of a couple of weeks, and those attacks happened. I was in California at the time. It made me question, why the hell am I doing this, and why the hell am I here? And yet somehow still managed to keep going forward and try to contribute to our society and culture, just continuing to do what I do. And I think that's what a lot of artists are challenged with, are we doing something valuable? Does it contribute to the collective whole, and does it help and heal anyone, or help provoke any thoughts from others by doing what we do? That curator in Michigan, Sarah Barra, I think is her name, if I'm remembering correctly, in Glen Arbor. These are the times where it's more than necessary that we just continue to do what we do for the human condition, for the human soul.
That's perfect. I was like, that was perfect.
Gosh, I hope I got her name right. Great conversations with her. And it was a woman representing the National Pastime Museum. And she wanted to commission me and some other artists in the neighborhood to make artwork around the poem, Casey at the Bat. And I said, all right, I like this. Do you need to see it a particular way? She said, no, we want your art, but this is your subject. So we want you to make your marks and your ideas. So she had seen other examples of my baseball art. And I just said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I got into Thayer's poem, understood it as just a poem that had been published in a newspaper, and it really was just a column in a newspaper, a very lengthy column. Got different books that other artists had done. This thing is just delicious. And this fellow made it look like baseball at the time, a baseball newspaper at the time. This is a book that a friend had given me about someone's personal collection. I think, there's private collections that Stephen Wong had talked about. Here's a book about how the poem was born, and Thayer keeping score. This is a Frank DeFord book about what might have happened with Casey afterwards. It's really, really a nice book. Plus, I got I got a reprint of one of the original printings, one of the earlier printings of Thayer's poem. It's just fun stuff. So I approached it as I was going to do. There's only 3 players named in that poem, Casey, Flynn, and Blake. So I just said, and these are my design sketches. And I said, hey, I can do it like I do my scorecard pieces, and see what you guys think of that. So I did these little mock-ups, these sketches. The original pieces that I sent to the collection are about 24 inches square, and I had to, as I'm scaling up, I had to do different things and view different things. So I also did imagery research of different ball players and who would look best as the different players. Finding out along the way here within these pieces what materials worked best against each other. But as I scaled it up to that larger piece, I had this blank space on the left side of all 3 pieces. And I said to myself, I gotta do something about that. And I decided to copy the actual poem as it was printed in the newspaper in 1888. In one of my books, had it reprinted as it appeared as the text in 1888 in San Francisco. So I made copies of this, put it on my projector, and I projected it on every single one, and I hand drew this text with pencil 3 times over, and the entire poem. Now the sad thing is, after doing all that, it was just marks. I can't recite the poem for you. You think I'd be able to do that after all this time? But it really helped bring a depth to this work for me. And then for my understanding of Thayer at the time and what he was going through as a creative person, it was really wonderful research to get into a work and get a greater understanding. As I said before, I'm from California, and I learned that Thayer was buried in the Santa Barbara area. So I made a trip up there to go to the cemetery and find a home that he had up there. But it looks like his widow had collected his cremains and taken them privately. And the house that he used to have there, unfortunately, probably is under the 101 freeway now. So I can take my research so far. I know there are other named entities associated with the poem that I still want to do research from. It's one of those things that I come back to. It's one of those projects, like many of these, I'll set aside for a little while, a couple of months, maybe a couple of years, and say, all right, I'm interested in that again. I'd like to take this further. So this is my studio mate, Mr. Bucky. He came to me within the last year from some other people here in Fort Point who were moving studios. And I was so grateful to get him. It was a strange question. Hey, you wouldn't like a life-size skeleton, would you? And I jumped up and down because last February I was at an artist residency in Tennessee, in Knoxville, at the Webb Schools. And I was there for about 6 weeks. And in the studio that they allotted for me, I had 2 of these skeletons, and I didn't know what to do with them. They're in my space. One was missing a head, and both were missing hands and stuff. But I started drawing them on a daily basis, multiple drawings a day, and I was doing blind contours, so I wasn't looking at the paper while I was drawing, I was just looking at the skeletons. And I really realized what pleasure it brought me. It was certainly a good drawing exercise, and it was just a nice way to remind myself to slow down. It really set the pace for the rest of my workday. So it's something I've incorporated. And when I came back, I really missed those skeletons. And I started shopping for them. And I was kind of putting out feelers here and there. I put it aside. I tried doing it with other objects, everyday household objects, like my coffee machine at home, different things. And it certainly was not the same. And so when I had the opportunity to take in Mr. Bucky, I was excited and gloriously took him in. So I've been doing more sketches of him every time I'm here in the space. And in fact, as a friend of mine says, because of the COVID, I went to order more notebooks, sketchbooks, and my order was canceled. I don't know if it was in manufacturing, if all the kids that were homeschooling needed sketchbooks more than me. Something happened. So my wife, as she was doing her quarantine thing, which was cleaning out her bookshelves, she's a chef, she was getting rid of some Cook's Illustrated bound notebooks. Now, Cook's Illustrated is a magazine, a Cook's magazine that comes out, and these are their bound editions of an entire year. And I was going to use them for collage work at first, because I thought, oh, these are great illustrations and just pages to paste other things on and to make other elements. And then I recognized, I've got sketchbooks. I can start drawing Mr. Bucky within these books. So that's what I've started doing. And it's a little bit strange. I understand the dichotomy of drawing a skeleton within a book about food. And that is not lost on me. I'm not trying to make a statement of it, but it's there. But it's nice to have a different way of seeing things and a different way to do things, and having this kind of odd bound thing. I don't know if these are finished works that the public will ever see. There are other ones that I have done that I framed up, and they've been happily taken in by different shows. But he's been a real treat in my life. And in fact, I went back to Tennessee this past March for an Open Studios event, and I took Mr. Bucky's head with me as my sketch companion to keep me busy for the week that I was gone. So he's even traveled a little bit with me. Keeps me honest. All I want to do is make authentic marks, you know? But I'm telling some lies along the way. It's a weird kind of line to walk. You know, I'm asking you to believe in this painting or drawing or collage that's depicting an object, but you know, I'm not trying to be photographically real. I want the hand of process involved. And hopefully you can see some of the thinking, maybe not understand directly what the thinking is. Let's be honest, I don't always understand directly what the thinking is. It doesn't end. In fact, these are from February of 2019. At one point, I found the mandible for one of the skeletons from the skull, so I was drawing just the mandible for a little bit. There's a big mandible piece. And it was a good thing to do because it helped introduce, for me, and maybe for other people, for other artists it's quite easy. I was able to do these drawings and then decide I'm going to start introducing paint into them. So it helped loosen up my painting and reevaluate any kind of personal rules or guidelines that I had pressed upon myself. Deconstruct and then kind of reconstruct the process. And then because I'm a visual learner, it was helpful. I like biological sciences. Acquaint myself with human anatomy and the skeleton as a whole. I used to be able to rattle off the number of pieces currently there. I know there are about 12,000 studs in the big caution sign. So it's about 28 by 38 inches. I know there's a piece of paper somewhere of the schematic of that piece that I have plotted out the number of bricks too. But hours go into it. And the Lego work is, it's again mark making. And it's a fixed color palette. So I'm still getting a lot of those things with just different parameters and different protocols. But it's still, an individual mark. It's a repetitive mark over and over, the bricks or the studs. And some of the work is like the one you referenced. It's that same element, that same Lego piece over and over and over, arranged just slightly differently to get a new look or effect. And it's very similar to, in my work, again, another busy mind with another busy project. I enjoy knitting, and I have done some larger pieces in knitting using large gauge rope. But again, it's the same thing. It's units being used over and over and over to create a larger work. So again, it's mark making, or it is for me. I don't really make very useful things when I knit. I think it's one of those things to keep my fingers and my mind busy. Well, in closing, I just want to thank you for taking the time to look at my work and to visit my studio virtually this year. Of course, you're welcome back anytime. I'm always here physically, but you can also see my work on my website at iankennelly.com, or find random things that I'm doing or seeing or finding on the street on Instagram.